Chapter 1. Daddy didn't raise a fool. Or, a full-blooded demon for that matter. So when I met this guy through the online dating app, I was already on edge. But his profile picture was beautiful. He had warm chestnut-colored skin and a mop of curly black hair. He also had lovely warm brown eyes. How could I resist? His profile couldn't have been better if I'd written it myself. He was educated, respectful, and he had a sense of humor. He seemed perfect. I wonder why he's still single. I must admit I have commitment issues. My mom is great. But my dad is the devil. I don't mean a bad guy. He is the actual devil. The king of hell or lord of darkness. His name is Lucifer Diaboloso. I don't use his name. I go by my mother's maiden name Knowles. Using his name would invite problems. Every demon within a 100-mile radius would either be trying to date me, to get in Dad's good graces. They could also kill me, to get his attention. But you get the idea. Online dating was the only option. My online date's name was Charles. He seemed nice enough. There was no sign of him being a demon. He didn't even seem narcissistic. So far so good. He picked a nice enough place for the first date. It was a small Italian restaurant in the affluent part of town. It had a lovely decor, soft lighting, and smelled great. It was pricey enough to make it seem like some thought went into it. But not expensive enough to break the bank. If only he had stayed nice. The date went from bad to worse. After 5 minutes, I realized a date with the demon would have gone much better. Bland personality, mixed with arrogance, is a recipe for disaster. I was relieved when the waitress approached. I needed a break. "Hello, are you two ready to order?" she asked. "Yes. The lady will have your antipasto, and I will have the pasta puttanesca," Charles said. "No thank you. The lady will not have antipasto. I would prefer the 4-cheese ziti," I said. "Do you really think that's wise? Wouldn't you prefer something lighter?" Charles asked. He looked me up and down, as if I needed to watch what I was eating. "No. I would not." "Thanks so much for your concern," I said, snapping my menu shut. What a jerk. I know that in the movies it seems romantic to order for someone on a date. But it sucked. Charles didn't even know me. We hadn't even gotten to the point of discussing our favorite foods. I hated to make the waitress feel uncomfortable. I had a strong feeling the food might be the best part of the date. To ease things, we made small talk. Charles decided it would make sense to tell me about all the crazy women he had met before me. After he had gone through his entire dating history, the only common denominator I could see was him. He thought this was all good. Lovey-dovey even. He leaned over and tried to kiss me across the table. I had to bite my tongue to keep from putting a curse on him, right then and there. I dodged him like I was dodging a bullet in an action movie. Kissing at the table is gross, especially with a mouthful of pasta. Not to mention garlic breath. To top it all off, he was shocked I didn't want to go home with him after our nightmare date was over. I should do a spell with my coven later to give him diarrhea. That would serve him right. As I suspected, the food was the highlight of the evening. As soon as I got settled on the couch in my sweats with my ice cream, the phone rang. Of course, it was my father. His timing was always the worst. I didn't bother to answer. I wasn't in the mood. I turned the ringer off and continued to watch TV. I should have known better. His face popped up on my screen, right in the middle of the romantic comedy I was watching. I thought it was my imagination until he turned to look at me. "Jane Diaboloso, I know that you heard your phone ring. Did it occur to you I was ignoring you?" "Because I was," I said. "Another bad date, I take it," he said. "The fact that you asked means you already know." "What do you want, Dad?" I asked. "I have some enemies." "Running hell will do that for you," I interjected. "This is different, Jane. Enemies in hell. I think some of my demons are rebelling. I need you to come home, he said. Come home? I never lived there full time. I don't even know anyone there, Dad. That is exactly why I need you. Covert ops. No one should know you are related to me. But you need to keep your human side and your witch side under wraps. Look, we've been through this. I am who I am, I said. I know. Don't misunderstand. It's for your safety. Humans aren't allowed here in that capacity. I'll think about it, I replied. But that's all you're getting today. I'm having a bad day. Talk tomorrow, I said, turning off the TV. He was smart enough not to bother me for the rest of the night. I hadn't been back to hell since I turned 18. No more mandatory visits. Not that I didn't still see my father. He came to visit, and we hung out from time to time. No Sunday dinners, though. Sundays weren't really his thing, not since the fall from heaven. Hell was not what most people thought it was. Well, not for demon employees anyway. Deeper, darker parts of hell exist, but that's not where Dad lived. There were all the dark caves, lava and fire that you would expect. But once you learn your way around, you can find the caves that have the best bars and restaurants. Some of the greatest chefs in the world have sold their souls for their cooking ability. The more decadent the food, the more the demand. You won't find any health food in hell. Chapter 2. I thought about it for a few days. In the end, the decision was easy. I had to help my father. He might be the devil, but I still loved him. If I was going to be going down south for a while, I should at least see my coven before I go. If for no other reason than to give Charles the bad date the runs. My coven consisted of 6 women, including me. Sophia went by the name Madame Sophia. Her day job consisted of pretending to be a psychic. She used a combination of tarot and witchcraft to help her patrons. Then there was Isabel. Isabel's day job had nothing to do with her craft. She was an accountant. Linda was a police officer. To be technical, she was a detective. She hated when people confused the two. Estrella was a singer who specialized in speaking to the dead, which helped her music career in many ways. Finally, there was Danny. Danny embraced the craft wholeheartedly. She owned an occult shop. I have been practicing with these women for years. I knew them all very well. The main thing we were very clear on was that our craft was not evil. General witchcraft had nothing to do with the devil. They had no idea who I really was. They have never seen my demon side. My plan was to keep it that way. I wasn't sure what I was going to tell them about my absence. While we were all friends, Sophia and I were the closest. I didn't want to lie to her, but I couldn't see any way around it. We had our meetings in the gathering room above Danny's shop. It was all very ethereal. There were sheer white drapes to let the sunlight filter in. In the center of the room stood a large round butcher block table. A large grimoire was the centerpiece of the table. It sat on a hand-carved stand. There were crystals and candles on almost every flat surface. The stand rotated so anyone could reach it to read or do research. We all kept our own smaller, more personal grimoires as well. We could give or take spells from this one as it suited our needs. We have never ripped them out of the book, of course. We copied them over. Some of the girls used tarot cards, so we had several decks. There were a few crystal balls around. Sophia used them the most. A coven is a great place of learning. Danny was teaching us how to use the cards and crystal balls. We worked well together. Real covens usually did. Witches need support like everyone else. Well, girls, it's good to see you all again. I'm afraid I have some bad news, I said. Bad news? Are you leaving us? Sophia asked. No, of course not. Nothing like that, I said. She's just being melodramatic as usual, Isabel said. What do you mean, melodramatic? I asked. Pay her no attention, Danny said. Anyway, I said. I am going out of town for a few days. Since when do you go out of town? Linda asked, with an inquisitive look in her eye. She was always the investigator. "If you must know, I'm going to see my father," I said. "Your father? You haven't seen your dad in years?" Sophia said, with a look of concern crossing her face. She didn't know any specifics about my father, but she did know that our relationship was somewhat estranged. She thought there was more I wasn't telling her about our relationship, because I didn't talk about it much. I had only told her he lived in the South. The other girls hadn't heard of him at all. They assumed I had a father because, well, everyone does. "It's no big deal. Really. Dad's just having some trouble adjusting to his new neighborhood," I said. "He's a little paranoid. He thinks people might be out to get him." It was much easier to tell the truth than it was to tell a lie. Plus, Linda would probably see through it. Even if Linda didn't, Sophia definitely would. Why would anyone be against an old man? "What's your father up to?" Linda asked. "Nothing that I know of," I said. "I think we should respect Jane's privacy on this issue," Sophia said. "There's nothing to respect," I said. "I just want to help my father." Danny broke up the conversation. "Okay. Well, we can say a spell for Jane's safety on her travels, and then get down to hearing about her hot date," she said. Everyone laughed, breaking up the tension. Danny always had a way to do that. She was good at this. If anyone was a leader, it was her. Our coven didn't have a leader, though. We're all equals here. Danny was the most maternal one in the coven, so she naturally assumed a leadership role. She never tried to bulldoze us or dictate how tasks should be completed. We all appreciated her. We took our places around the table. We each lit a black candle for safety and protection. We all pulled out our wands. Mine was cleverly disguised as a bracelet. I like to keep it with me at all times. Danny wrote the words "safe travel" on 6 bay leaves, and we each burned one on the fire of our candles. We said a quick group spell for my safety and put away our wands. When we finished, we grabbed some wine and talked about the date. The girl all loved the idea of giving him diarrhea, but decided against it. We didn't want to take the chance he was on a date with some other unsuspecting woman. We didn't want to put anyone else through more of his bullshit than necessary. After our meeting, I hopped on the highway and headed for Jersey. If I was going to visit as a regular old demon, I had to take the Demon's Gate. Based on the smell, I could tell I was getting close. It smelled like rot with a thick layer of sulfur. A lot of people thought that the smell was just Jersey. Others thought it was a nearby landfill. They were wrong. A hellmouth is a foul-smelling place. I headed for the oldest graveyard. Our doorway was hidden in one of the crumbling crypts. There were no gargoyles or statues on the outside. It was gray and weather-worn. The crypt unkempt, with ivy snaking up the walls. There was no lock on the door, but one of the large stone doors hung on the frame at an odd angle. It threatened to fall on anyone who passed beneath it. If the look and the smell of it weren't enough to keep trespassers at bay, there was the silence. Suffocating silence enveloped anyone coming within 5 feet of the crypt. All other sounds faded away. It was so silent that I could hear my heartbeat. I pushed the broken door as it groaned and creaked in protest. It was pitch black inside, but I had been through this often enough to know where I was going. I walked straight about 10 paces. When I stretched out my hand, I touched the back wall of the crypt. It was hot to the touch. I reached under my jacket and pulled my dagger from the holster. A girl could never be too safe. I quickly sliced across the palm of my right hand. I grimaced at the pain, but it would be short-lived. I wiped my dagger on my jeans before placing it back in the holster. I cupped my hand to get a decent pool of blood. I dipped my fingers from my left hand into the blood, and made the sigil for Lucifer on the wall. The sigil began to glow, illuminating the crypt in red light. Then cracks began to appear, splintering out from the sigil. The cracks spread over the entire wall. The room began to shake. Pieces of the wall began to break off, falling back into an ever-widening red hole. When the entire wall had fallen away, black stairs heading down appeared. Dad always did have a flair for the dramatic. I whispered a quick healing spell, and watched the cut in my palm stitch itself back together. That would be the last of my white magic for a little while. I focused on the seed of evil that I was born with, and felt small horns push through my braids. I could change them depending on my mood. I chose a modest short black style to contrast with my shoulder-length auburn braids. I took a deep breath and walked back into hell. The fire fields were my favorite part of hell. I had to pass through them before reaching the city. On both sides of the path, there were fields covered in molten lava and burning embers. The blackened trees scattered throughout the fields would never fall or splinter. Lightning would strike, sending spider webs of electricity over the perpetually burning fields. I walked down the black path, inhaling the burning charcoal-like scent. I had stayed away too long. I could see the tips of the tall buildings of Inferno coming into view. Dad had advised me of a recent remodel, and he had understated the effect. The city had been redone to reflect a neo-futuristic architecture. All the buildings were either red, black, or mirrored. Some were a combination of all three. There were soaring spires and oddly angular skyscrapers. I missed the old Gothic decor. I hoped that the old city was still there underneath it all. The gargoyle statues sat scattered across the top of the wall around the city. At the gate there were two 12-foot statues of hooded figures. They were holding flaming swords that would burn forever. They stood with the hilts of their swords in their hands, and the tips buried in the ground. "Hello, Sam." "Hello, Dean," I said. I had picked those names for them as a child. Everyone else called them the guards. In response, they slowly lifted their great flaming sword and drove them back into the ground. The force was almost strong enough to knock me off my feet. I smiled, happy that they remembered me, and crossed over the gate into the city. The buildings are even larger when you're standing at their feet, more awe-inspiring. There were no lights in the city. The only visible light came from the fires and the interior of the buildings. It gives off an eerie feeling. It wasn't quite dark, but everything was shrouded in a red haze. It was almost calming. I snapped out of my hell haze. I needed to get serious if I was going to find a place to live. We used human money here. Demons needed to know how to use it in case they had to serve Earth, or topside as we called it. That way, everyone would already be familiar with the concept of paper money and debit cards. Some demons like to go out of their way, make it inconvenient for everyone involved. I have seen demons pay for everything with coins. Others would use currencies from several different countries in one transaction. I used US dollars that I already had. I stopped at one of the high-rise condo buildings with a great view of the lava river. After looking around, it seemed to be too much in the middle of things. Hiding out would be easier out of the spotlight. I found a beautiful brownstone, lava stone, building on the edge of Inferno. The bedroom window had an unobstructed view of the fire fields. That plus the location had me sold. I wasn't sure how to convince my father. I had to wait almost an hour, and the leasing agent was rude. That was going to take some getting used to. Being rude was expected in hell. My phone began to ring as soon as I walked out from the leasing office. Speak of the devil. I couldn't avoid his calls here. He could pop up at any minute. "Hi, Dad," I said. "Where are you, young lady?" "I thought you were coming down today," he said. "I'm here, well, not at your place but in Inferno." "It would be best if I stayed on my own," I said. "You're too good to come to see your own father." "I understand," he said. "No, of course not. Undercover, remember?" "I guess that is a good point," he said with reluctance. "I was hoping to see you while you were down here. But if you're going to infiltrate my usurpers, you shouldn't be seen with me." "Usurpers? That seems a bit dramatic," I said. "Drastic times, Jane. Drastic times. Is there anything else that you need? Don't let your guard down and keep in touch." "Some demons have a soft side," I said. "Don't be insolent," he said, hanging up the phone. My phone got hotter and hotter in my hand. I dropped it before it burned me. It landed with the screen facing up. There was a text from my father that said, "Lol." Some things never changed. I got the keys to the apartment right away. Luckily, it came furnished. It wasn't my style, but a little bit of my magic would fix that right up. I went inside and locked the door. The apartment had red walls and black minimalist Swedish-style furniture. All the furniture seemed very low to the floor, except the kitchen table. That was a high cafe table. Not my style at all. I took off my backpack and took out my spell supplies. I spread my altar cloth on the floor and set up my candles, grimoire, crystals, and took off my bracelet. I passed my hand over it. "Make the crooked places straight," I whispered. My bracelet slowly unfurled until it straightened out and took the shape of my wand. I had used my magic in the past to change the color of my eyes or my car. I had even used it to make my hair longer. I knew that I could work my magic in the apartment. I lit my candles, and I said the words I had to say. I made sure to make this glamour only effect on me, so everyone else would see the typical demon decor. I closed my eyes and did my spell work. When I opened my eyes, there were luxurious comfy sofas and beautiful shiplap tables. There were throw pillows and area rugs, even a little fireplace. I know it seems silly, a fireplace in hell. But it was the perfect place to store my candles. The kitchen had granite countertops and deep mahogany cabinets. I pulled out a small nondescript clutch from my backpack. It held all my earthly belongings. It was much bigger than it appeared. I opened it up and took out all my clothes and shoes. I hung my most stylish fare in the bedroom closet. The rest shoved into the dresser drawers. Before I settled in for the night, I decided to have a glass of wine. Luckily, wine was always flowing. It came out of the kitchen faucets in hell. Red wine on the right. White wine on the left. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. It would be my first day of training as an influencer. I can't say I was looking forward to it, but I have a lot of work to do. Chapter 3. Monday morning, I overslept. I wanted to get an early start so I could scope out a local coffee shop. Aside from wine, there was nothing to eat or drink at my place. I didn't have any of the supplies to make coffee myself. I hadn't planned for this. I rushed out the door and headed to the tallest building in Inferno. It was red and angular with black windows. I went inside, and the receptionist advised that influencer training was on the 15th floor. Elevators were for management only. Walking up 15 flights of stairs to work was not a good way to start the day. Thank goodness, I decided to wear flats this morning. I thought I was tired without my coffee. Physical exercise would take my exhaustion to a whole new level. I slogged up stair after stair after stair. The stairways were designed to look even more daunting than they were. It must be the architect's idea of a joke. Other demons rushed up and down the steps, bumping past me. They were used to this. One woman offered a weary glance over her shoulder, paired with a weak smile. After what felt like hours, I finally made it to my floor. I was somewhat successful in not sweating through my shirt. I never appreciated my braids more than I did at that moment. If my hair had been loose, it would be plastered to my face. Yet I was here ready to start work. When I entered the 15th floor, a receptionist greeted me. "First day," she asked. "How could you tell?" I asked. "Because you look exhausted," she said. "Most demons are used to it by now." Fun little joke from the management. Must be nice to be management. Fun little joke. I wasn't aware the management made jokes, I said. Only at our expense. "So you are who exactly?" she asked. "Jane Knowles, reporting for duty," I said. I was still using my mother's maiden name. It was easier than using my father's. Plus, I didn't want anyone to know who I was. "Oh, right. You're the one who was a soul collector, but couldn't get into the work," she said. "Something like that," I said. I figured that would be a good enough cover story. There were lots of jobs in hell. Soul collectors were the most straightforward ones. They picked up souls of people bound for hell and acted as their escorts. Well, it's none of my business. But child influences will be in the conference room on the right. Are there others? Or is it just me? One more, she said, turning away. I guess she dismissed me. I headed into the conference room and took a seat. On the conference room table was a legal notepad and one black pen. There were no pictures on walls. It was just a blank white room with no windows. I took a seat in front of the notepad. I assumed it was for me. A man was sitting on the other side of the table. He didn't speak. His notepad had the name Esso written across the top in block letters. He didn't look in my direction. So I waited. It felt like hours, but I couldn't be sure. The clock on the wall was set to 5 o'clock. It would be great if that were the correct time. I would be on my way out of this joint. But I waited still. Finally, 3 demons came into the room. They all seemed to be smug, judging by the smirks on their faces. 3 trainers at once. Training was going to be worse than I thought. It took me less than 5 minutes to discover that my trainers were jerks. They took turns insulting me. They felt that soul collectors were average. No better than people collecting change on the street corner. How hard could it possibly be to collect the soul that was coming this way anyway? I didn't try to convince them that I would be good at this. Honestly, I didn't know if I would be. But I told my trainers I thought it would be fun. It might be fun to cause a child to have a tantrum and watch their parents' subsequent misery. Some kids were close to demonic already. Teenagers were the easiest. They had so many hormones surging through their bodies that they couldn't tell when a demon was influencing. They have the vocabulary to say many exciting, hateful things. Apparently, this was the right thing to say, because it got the trainers all worked up into a tizzy. They stopped taking turns dragging me down and started getting down to the training. They didn't say much to Esso. From what I could tell, he had been working his way up to this position for a while. The trainers agreed with me about the teenagers. They would be a great place to start. Late teens. Ages 16 to 18 were the prime age, because they had driver's licenses. They could even go so far as to run away from home. Just when things were starting to go well, I made a mistake. I tried to make a joke. I don't even remember what it was, but it didn't go over well. Beside me was a file cabinet that I hadn't noticed when I arrived. One of the trainers reached out and pulled a manual roughly the size of a telephone book from it, and slammed it on the desk in front of me. I jumped, startled by the loud bang. Before you can influence anyone, you must learn the rules. All 3 trainers then walked out, leaving with no further instruction. Just me, Esso, and this tome. I flipped through it briefly. Not all the words were in English. Some were Aramaic, some were in Latin, and some of the languages I didn't even recognize. There was no way I was going to read it. I saw something sticking out of the middle of the book. I flipped to that page and found a shorter book, almost a pamphlet, titled, "So You Want to Be a Soul Collector." That did the trick for me. It looked like it had actionable steps, complete with direct information. I slammed the giant book shut and walked out. Esso was still sitting there. The walk back down those millions of stairs was much shorter, and I was light on my feet. I wasn't concerned about skipping out early. It's not exactly like they could fire me from hell. Plus, bad behavior was encouraged here. Taking the rest of the day off, I decided to make my way back home. Chapter 4. I was surprisingly tired when I got home. It was probably the stairs. To be honest, it was the most exercise I've gotten in about 5 years. I was not looking forward to repeating that. My muscles ached and my feet hurt. Fortunately, the bathroom was designed for people who like to be pampered. It had a huge, jetted bathtub. I grabbed myself a glass of red wine and went to fill up the tub. I had myself a good soak. After an hour, my skin was getting wrinkly. I decided it was time to get down to business. The least I could do was find a place that serves coffee. I hoped they served coffee in hell. I got out of the tub, wrapped myself in a fuzzy robe, and headed for my laptop. Strangely enough, there was local Wi-Fi. I don't know if it was just my brownstone, or the entirety of Inferno. But the password was devil. I guessed it on my first try. How original. Why bother password protecting the network at all? No was trying to hack into hell. Most people didn't believe it even existed. The ones who did weren't trying to get in anytime soon. I turned my location on and searched for a local shop. I found one not too far from me called Manic Mondays. Cute name. They had an online menu that seemed kind of fun. Fun and alcoholic. Liquor and coffee were two of my favorite things, so I knew this place was a good match. I would have to make it a point to stop there tomorrow morning. I did some research on social activities in the area to see if I could find anything about this offshoot of demons. I found nothing. It's not as though they could say club to overthrow the devil or anything. I decided to give Sophia a call. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. Hello. Which psychiatry? How can we help you? Sophia asked. Which psychiatry? Are you serious, Sophia? I asked. I answer the phone differently every time I pick it up, she said. Is there something I can help you with, Miss Jane? I just missed the sound of your voice, kid, I said. What are you up to? Working. Same as ever. I had an interesting possession case today, but that's about it. How about you? I've been okay. Got to see the old man. Just checking in to make sure I haven't missed anything fun, I said. Like I said, nothing here. Aside from the possession that you don't seem to want more information about. Fine, I'll bite. Was it a demon possession? Vampires, actually, she said. Vampires? Can they possess people now? They're real? I asked. That was a new one, even for me. See? That's something you should have asked more about. You know what? I'm not going to tell you. Just for spite. I would like to stay and chat with you, but I've got a new client coming at 5. I should go. Talk soon? Talk soon, I replied and hung up. I was missing home already. A little bit of food might make me feel better. I ordered from one of the dozens of Chinese takeout places in the area. It was a long wait for my food to come. Of course, my food was late and cold. Even though it was cold, it was some of the best lo mein I've ever had. Fortunately, I had a microwave, so it wasn't too cold for long. I woke up early the following day. I made it out of the house with just enough time to stop at Manic Mondays. I was still bleary-eyed when I walked in, but a good coffee shop was hard to miss. It was set up the way I would have expected to see a coffee shop topside. It had a modern flow that was comfortable without being overly futuristic. It wasn't made for hipsters either. Not a mason jar in sight. There were works of art on every wall, and each of them was for sale. Not that weird concept art that no one wanted to buy, but cool pieces you could imagine in your own home. The general decor was very warm and inviting. Like the rest of the patrons, I greedily looked over the menu. I had my heart set on a witch's brew. How appropriate. It was half hot chocolate, half dark roast coffee, and a splash of brandy. Just what I needed to get things going this morning. While I was waiting for my drink, I noticed a man that had a very attractive build. It's hard to be attracted to the back of someone's head, but if I had to choose, he would be the one I would pick. He was telling off someone who was berating the barista. I know that we're demons, but have some compassion, you bastard, he said sharply. There are almost 50 of us in here. The girl is getting our drinks as fast as she can. I don't know who you think you are, buddy. But I can demand my coffee and I do as I please, the customer said. I can also put you on your ass if I please, Handsome Head said, puffing up to full height. The rude customer backed off. It was too early to engage in fisticuffs. Plus, he was a bit smaller than the demon knight in shining armor. He let it go. He mumbled under his breath and took his business elsewhere. The handsome stranger turned around and had a prettier face than I would have predicted. He had a warm brown skin tone and black eyes. His ridged black horns traced the curve of his head, coming to a point at the back of it. By the time he took his coffee and made a move to leave, I had my witch's brew and was heading out. "Nice move there," I said as he passed me. He seemed unimpressed. He just sighed, rolled his eyes, kept drinking his coffee. I took a sip of my coffee. It was even better than I thought it would be. His rejection stung, but I had places to be. After reading through the pamphlet the night before, I knew what they expected of me. Creativity. I could handle that. My new work motto is creativity and lies. I dressed in all black for work the following day. I wrestled my curls into a high ballerina bun. I meant business. I stopped at Manic Mondays for another witch's brew. No brandy this time. I added a shot of Irish cream liquor just to spice things up a bit. I stood off to the side waiting for my drink. "Dick?" "Latte for Dick," the barista shouted. I smirked. What a perfect name for a demon. I looked around to see who would answer the call. It was the jerk who brushed me off the last time that I was here. How appropriate. "See something funny?" he asked. As a matter of fact, I do. "Excuse me," I said as I pushed past Dick and went to collect my drink from the barista. When I turned back, he was gone. It was just as well. He might be cute, but he was definitely a dick. When I got to work, I found the stairs a bit easier, but it could have been the alcohol. I strode up the stairs with determination. I didn't politely step aside when other demons tried to pass me. They could either wait or figure it out. I made it to my door and didn't bother talking to the receptionist. I just walked straight into the conference room. My trainers were already there waiting for me. I wasn't sure if that was a good sign. My confidence was waning. "Nice of you to finally join us." "Thanks, ma'am," I said. "My name is Nadia. You would have learned that if you had stuck around yesterday. The other two are merely observers. You do not need to know their names." "Sorry about that, Nadia." "Was the start time moved up?" "Yes, it was. Just because you weren't here to receive your instructions doesn't mean you are not going to be held to the changes in your schedule." "But that doesn't make any sense," I protested. "I could care less if you approve. We have things to do. I would like to get started. Or would you prefer to continue this debate?" Nadia asked. "We can move on," I said. "How gracious of you," Nadia said. "Today you will job shadow. Watch me in the field. Do not comment. Do not ask questions. In fact, don't even speak," Nadia said. "Okay," I replied. Nadia gave me a withering stare for daring to speak out of turn. I didn't say anything more. Nadia rose and left the room. I followed. She strode to the elevators. I had no idea where we were going, but I didn't want to ask. So I just followed her downstairs. She led me out the front door and straight out of Inferno. As we crossed to the fire fields, I was once again struck by their beauty and found myself lagging behind. Luckily, I managed to catch myself before she noticed. I hurried to catch up with her just as she was sliding through the hell gate, back out to the topside, via the crypt. We walked out into the rank New Jersey air. We walked through the cemetery. We were both dressed in black, so we didn't stand out. Nadia let herself into a nearby sedan. I wasn't sure if it belonged to her, or if she was just in the habit of commandeering the vehicle. We drove for a while, until we reached an average-looking split-level ranch home in a plain neighborhood. She parked the car right out front and walked straight to the front door. The door was unlocked. We headed inside. She walked into the kitchen and sat down beside a teenage girl who was steadily working on homework. I have never seen this in action, but from what my father told me, humans can only see demons when they wanted to be seen. There was no risk of the girl fleeing after noticing strangers with horns in her kitchen. The girl was having a pleasant conversation with her mother as her mother prepared dinner. It stopped being pleasant as soon as Nadia leaned over and whispered in the girl's ear. I wasn't close enough to hear what she was saying, but it was quite clear to me it wasn't something nice. We were demons after all. The girl let out an exasperated sigh, pushed her homework away, and crossed in front of her mother to look in the refrigerator. "What do you think you're doing?" her mother asked. "It's pretty clear, Sharon." "I'm watching TV," the teen responded. "I'm not sure who you think you're calling Sharon. My name is Mom." "It looks like you have to finish your homework," Sharon said. "I'm bored with my homework and I needed a study break." "It's not like it's going anywhere. I have plenty of time to finish it later." "You'll finish it now." "I don't know where this attitude is coming from, but I've already had enough of it." "Mom, everything I am I got from you." "Okay, I've had enough of you. Come get this homework and take it to your room." There is another deep sigh as the teen slammed the fridge door. She got her homework, cut her eyes at her mother, and stomped up the stairs. The mother just sighed, shook her head, and poured herself a glass of wine. Nadia smiled and walked out of the house. I hurried to catch up. The day continued with her influencing teenagers to be jerks to their parents, smiling smugly and walking out. I followed in silence, ever the obedient worker. At the end of the day, she headed back to the sedan. We drove back to the cemetery and walked back to the crypt. I still hadn't said anything. She slowed her pace as we walked through the fire fields. She turned to look at me. "You did well today," Nadia said. "I didn't even say anything," I responded. "Exactly. I expected you to put up more of a fight. I hope you learned something." "I think I did." "I need you to do better than think," Nadia said, arching one eyebrow. "Well, it's pretty clear how you influence the behavior of humans. You whisper sweet evils in their ears," I said. "That's about right," she said, giving a small nod. That seemed to be enough to convince her that I was not a complete moron. She said nothing more as we walked through the fields and the gates, back to the company building. At the doorway she dismissed me, sending me on my way. It would have been much more convenient if she had done this at the entrance to the city. Then I could have just gone home. At least, I could stop for some quick Italian on the way. The job seemed easy enough. It was something that I can do and still fly under the radar. Plus, I wouldn't cause too much damage to humankind. With no demons checking on me, I would easily be able to investigate for my father. Chapter 5. Wednesday and Thursday were more of the same. I went on influencing test runs after stopping at Manic Mondays on my way to work. I didn't have any more run-ins with Dick, but I did see him from time to time. Mostly small glances and side eyes. I continued to have my coffee with Irish cream. Hey, a girl had to get her rewards when she could. I found influence shadowing a little more emotionally draining than I anticipated, but it was nice to keep busy. When I was leaving work on Thursday, the receptionist stopped me. "Hey, Jane?" "Yes," I quickly looked at the nameplate on her desk. "Erica, how can I help you?" "Well, I've seen you here for a few days now, and I am a member of the club that I think you would be interested in." "A club?" "Well, I am newly back in town, always looking to meet new demons," I said. "It's no big deal. It's just kind of a social club. You don't have to have any particular interests or anything. We meet on Thursdays at Manic Mondays. Do you know where that is?" "Sure, I passed by there this morning." "Great. I'll see you there. We meet at 8. "That works. I'll see you tonight." I made my way down the stairs. I wasn't sure what kind of club this would be, but it would get me out of my routine of eating takeout and sitting on the couch drinking wine. At least it was something new. A night out at Manic Mondays was a start. I went home and grabbed some leftover takeout from the fridge. Eating it straight out of the carton, I searched my closet for something to wear. Most of my wardrobe was black, but I had a clean silver top that would spice things up a bit. I decided to take a nap before I met Erica at Manic Mondays. After my nap, I dressed quickly. I let my hair loose in a mass of curls. I was tired of the braids, and I missed having my hair free. It's not like I had to keep up with professional hairstyles tonight. I headed to Manic Mondays. Surprisingly, it was more crowded than it was in the mornings. I was surprised that was even possible. The fact that I could still walk through the dining area was a small miracle. I laughed to myself at the thought. Miracles in hell. The decor was slightly different at night. Maybe it was the lighting. There were dim lights and the walls were a warm, woodsy tone. The tables were set up differently than they had been this morning. They seemed to be set up to indicate a center point. Not quite as a stage, but close enough. Everyone was mingling, and Erica was right there waiting. "Jane, I'm so glad you made it," she said. "Thanks for inviting me," I said. "I hope you like dessert. We have a full table of every kind dessert you can think of." Erica gestured to the table. She wasn't kidding. It was the size of a large buffet table, and it was covered with everything from fruit to impeccably designed tiered cakes. I was starting to appreciate this get-together more and more. I grabbed the plate and had some amazing walnut brownies while Erica took me around introducing me to everyone. For demons, everyone was kind and welcoming. It was odd. I felt a sense of camaraderie. I could see myself doing this every Thursday night. One of the people she took the time to introduce me to was Dick. He was on his best behavior tonight. He was charming and witty. He even apologized for getting off on the wrong foot. I was appropriately aloof. I accepted his apology, but I was happy when we moved on to someone else. Later that night, I could feel his eyes on me as I drank my espresso martini with another walnut brownie. I chose not to make an issue of it. After a few hours, I was ready to go. I said my goodbyes and headed for the door. I felt someone grab my arm. I turned around and saw that it was Dick. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. "I am," I said. "Aren't you having a good time?" "I had a great time, and now it's time for me to go," I said. My tone was a little colder than I meant it to be. "Well, I'm glad you had a good time. It seems you're new around here. Are you from an outlying city?" he asked, unfazed by my coolness. "I'd love to stay and chat. But I must be going," I said, easing my way around him. I barely made it through the doorway when he grabbed my arm again. "It's dark out there. Maybe I could walk you home." "I'm pretty sure that it's dark 24 hours a day here. I've walked home plenty of times," I said. "Maybe I'm afraid of the dark," Dick said, flashing me a winning smile. It may have been the martinis, but it was hard to say no to that smile. So I let Dick walk me home. I've never had a man walk me home before. It was kind of nice. When we got to my door, I tried to brush him off. It wasn't working. I gave up and asked him if he would like to come inside for a coffee. He said no at first but didn't leave. I tried to unlock the door and dropped my keys like an idiot. He picked them up and helped me get the door open. I had no choice but to let him in. This time he said yes. I bounded up the stairs, totally forgetting about my glamour. I hoped he wouldn't see it. If I did the spell right, he wouldn't know the difference. I guess we would find out. I went to the living room. Everything looked the same way as it always did to me. I was interested to see if Dick would see my cozy country home, or the modern style that everyone else seemed to love. He stopped in his tracks in the middle of the living room, his mouth agape. Dick didn't say anything for several moments. He looked left and right. He seemed to sniff the air. "Is everything okay over there?" I asked. "Everything is fine," he said. "Really? It looks like you think my house smells or something." "It smells fine. It looks fine. It's just different." "What do you mean different?" "It smells almost like a human home. Like linen and air." "Is this what you do? You come into someone's house and insult them?" "Why would my home smell like a human home? Because it doesn't smell like your filthy bachelor pad? I don't have food rotting on the table and empty cups laying on the floor. So it must smell human? I think you've outstayed your welcome. The coffee offer no longer stands." "I trust you can see yourself out," I said, holding open the front door. "I didn't mean any offense. You just asked me what my issue was. How can you blame a man for being honest? I merely pointed towards the door, and he saw himself out. I should have known letting him walk me home was a bad idea. Dating demons is never a good thing. Chapter 6. I couldn't believe I came so close to getting caught. I would never have thought that just the smell of my home would be enough to set off alarms. I looked down to see that my hands were shaking. I was frightened by the prospect of him outing me. Demons didn't take well to humans here. Well, that was my theory. No human had ever been in here. I know that I was no average human, but I didn't want to have to explain that to him. It was too late to change the smell of my house now anyway. He'd already been there. Now he wouldn't be coming back. It was just as well. I had enough research to do. I didn't need to be distracted by some handsome demon. He was handsome. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine to take the edge off. It was a red wine kind of night. Too serious of an issue to settle for something light. The wine dulled my senses just enough to relax me a bit. I had to make sure no other demons came inside my house. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't already getting lonely. I just wanted a friend. I had a light bulb moment. I was a witch after all. I could make my own friends. I went to my closet. I looked around until I found an old stuffed dog I had since I was small. The little stuffed Pomeranian was named Blas. Funnily enough, that meant unwavering protector. Stuffed animals couldn't protect me from much, but it was a small comfort. I said the spell to unfurl my wand once again. I gathered my supplies. I got a white candle for innocence and peace. I get a black candle for safety and protection. I placed one on each side of Blas. I lit an incense behind him. I picked up my wand and gently waved it over him. What is still bring back to me? Keep this torment far from me. Trouble may come from heaven or hell. May my home and I be safe and well. I tapped Blas on the head with my wand. His fur started to ruffle. Then he gave a shake and let out a yip. He ran over and licked my hand. It had been a long time since I've seen Blas up and about. I usually only needed him in times of extreme distress. I was happy to have him back. He seemed happy to be there. I picked him up, and we sat on the couch snuggling. Thank the devil for pirated cable. At least I could watch mushy chick flicks anytime I wanted to. I needed it tonight. Things were back to normal for the next few days. Well, as normal as they could be in hell. I put the dog back to his stuffed animal form, so he wouldn't make too much noise while I was away. Pets were frowned upon down here. Pets were for love and affection, and the demon mindset was more selfish and cold. No pets in hell. Well, fish were popular. You couldn't pet them, and they didn't respond to you, so they were ideal. I preferred my pets warm and fuzzy. When I opened the door to head out for my usual latte, I saw a black envelope on the doorstep. I picked it up and shut the door. Leaning on the kitchen counter, I opened the envelope pensively. It was a card. A black card. Where on earth would you get greeting cards in hell? Or where in hell would you get greeting cards? It was from Dick. It said, "Sorry I upset you, I didn't mean it." Not much by way of an apology. I decided to skip my morning coffee. I didn't want to run into him at Manic Mondays. I had finally finished my training, so they trusted me to influence alone. I didn't like the idea of making people do bad things. Influencing children to have tantrums was perfect for me. It wasn't that hard to do, especially when it came to 2-year-olds. I did that for a few weeks. Just whispering in the word no in their ear was enough to set them off. Once they get a hold of the word, they would yell it, scream it, and roll on the floor saying it. They would say it when they meant yes, and say it when they meant no. The possibilities were endless. My trainer seemed unimpressed with my solo progress. But they didn't question my tactics. They never told me to try something new. I did try to avoid stressed single mothers. They had enough going on. I received 2 more cards from Dick. Neither of them had better apologies than the first. I opened them, scanned them, and threw them in the trash. Hopefully, he would get the hint when I never replied. I started making my morning coffee at home. I was terrible at making coffee. The first batch tasted like dirty water. I tried to make it again, and the coffee was so strong it hurt my teeth. Not to mention that I had run laps around my townhouse. Good thing I had 2 floors. There was another meeting coming up, and I couldn't see how I can avoid it. I didn't have to go. The meetings were the only time I got social interaction with other demons. I dressed all in black, giving my best Audrey Hepburn impression. I wore black flats, slim black pants, a black turtleneck, and put my hair in a low chignon. If it weren't so dark in the cafe at night, I would have worn sunglasses. I thought about a hat, but I didn't want to oversell it. My plan was just to blend in with the decor and avoid Dick at all costs. I never thought I would hear myself say those words. When I got to the meeting, Dick was waiting for me at the door. Of course he was. I go out of my way to avoid something, and it smacks me in the face. "Please get out of my way," I said. "I don't mean to bar your way. I just thought we could talk about what happened the other night," he replied. "There's nothing to talk about. I let you in my home, and you said it smelled funny. That was pretty clear." "It wasn't so much funny as different," he said. "Remember the part where I said I didn't want to talk about it?" I asked. "What I mean is, I didn't mean to offend you." "Well, you failed on that account. I have a meeting to get to," I said. I brushed past him and took my seat at a table of demons I'd seen before. I looked back at him. He had a dejected look on his face. Not my problem. The meeting progressed normally. There was a lot of idle chit-chat. I could feel Dick's eyes on me throughout the night. I didn't want him to try to walk me home again, so I tried to duck out early. He stood up as soon as I did. Not only was I dressed like a ninja, but I also moved like one. Obviously, the regular avoidance measures weren't going to work on him. I had to do something. I couldn't keep Dick from coming around much longer. Avoiding him wasn't working. There had to be some spell or charm that I could use to get rid of him. When I made it back home, I checked my grimoire, but it had nothing about getting rid of a man. I was going to need outside help. I called Sophia. This time she picked up on the first ring. "Shoes and spells. We cure all ills. How can I help you?" she said. "Sophie, I swear I don't know if any business works like this," I said. "Says the woman who ran away to Daddy's house and has no job," Sophie said with a laugh. "I'll have you know I'm working here." "Doing what exactly?" "Helping with childcare. I'm just an assistant." "You? Working with kids? I've heard all that I can stand. I should probably go now before my head explodes." "I'm with you, but someone has to help the old man. The extra money helps. Anyway, that's not why I called you. I need help." "Help? What happened?" "I'll help any way that I can. Just this local guy. He won't leave me alone. I need to know if there's anything I can do to get rid of him." "Did he hurt you or threaten you?" No. Nothing like that. He just won't leave me alone." "Is he stalking you or something?" "He keeps leaving me these cards and it's just annoying." "Oh, I get it. A man is nice to you, so you want to get rid of him," Sophia said with a tinge of sarcasm in her voice. "He was rude at first. Anyway, I just want him to go away. I wish I could help. But I can tell by your voice that this mystery man is good looking. So no. Deal with it. What happened to anything I need? I just want to focus on helping my father." "Yeah, wrangling kids. Taking care of your dad. I can see why you would want a break from a handsome man for that." "I didn't call you for a lecture, Sophia." "Then you must have dialed the wrong number." "Never mind. I'm sorry I called." "No, you're not. My crystal ball never lies." We talked for a few more minutes, getting caught up on things. Having an everyday conversation with my bestie warmed my heart. Even if I wasn't rid of this man, at least I had my girl. I was still restless, but I couldn't sleep. I decided to go for a walk. Surprisingly, there was no crime in Inferno. It would be kind of pointless. I was just walking around the edge of town. I stopped to visit Sam and Dean, and they struck their swords with the ground to greet me. I heard deep snuffling noises behind me. I stopped in my tracks. I'd heard that sound before. I turned around and came face to face with my father's hellhounds. They had to be over 4 feet tall on 4 legs. The dogs were jet black with giant teeth, and their red tongues were flapping out of their mouths. Their red eyes and pointed ears made them look like demonic Dobermans. They were happy to see me. I walked over and gave them each a rub. "Jane, what are you doing out here?" my father asked. "Walking, Dad. Same as you." "Don't call me that out here. You never know who's listening." "The only ones out here are Sam and Dean. I think we're safe." "Sam and Dean?" he asked. "Sam, Dean, say hello to the man in charge." I turned to the 2 statues. They lifted their swords slowly, pointed them up towards the sky, and struck them back down with more force than they did for me. My father stood with his mouth hanging open. "What's the matter, old man?" "They're just statues. In all the centuries I've been here, I've never seen them move. I've never even heard of it. I didn't know it was possible." "You have your father's charms," he said with a wry smile. "You must have me confused with someone else. My father is many things, but I wouldn't call any of them charming," I said with a laugh. "My dogs seem to like you." "They don't like anyone." "Not even me?" Dad said. "We'll see about that." I squatted down in front of both dogs and put my hands on each of their chins. I whispered in one's ear and then the other. They both perked up. They stood on their hind legs and turned in a circle, then sat back down. This time Dad's mouth was on the floor. I smiled and gave each of them a scratch behind the ear. "Good boys," I said. "Don't you ever do that to my dogs again," he said, his eyes flashing red. "These are supposed to be hellhounds, not dancing poodles." "You said they liked me. I just wanted to see what would happen." "Do you have any news for me?" "No. Nothing new. This guy Dick seems to be following me." "Following you? Do I need to handle it?" "Not like that, Dad. He's just kind of weirdly into me." Now it was his turn to smile. "I'm sure your mother would appreciate it if you were to settle down," he said, wiggling his eyebrows. "Hilarious. I'm sure she would get a kick out of that. Anyway, I should be getting back." He laughed as he walked away with his hellhounds leading the charge. I shook my head and went home. Tonight would be a good night to wake up Laws. Chapter 7. Saturday morning, I woke up early. I figured I would take the time to go back topside, and maybe do some shopping. I wasn't going to go far enough to see my friends, but at least I could feel the sun on my face. I missed the fresh air. I opened my door to leave, and saw Dick standing on my doorstep with another black card and a black rose. I was too stunned to shut the door in his face. "What are you doing here again? This is getting out of hand." "I just wanted to apologize," he said. A good way to do that is to actually say the words, "I apologize." Even "I'm sorry" would have worked. All these cards you have to, not one of them said anything of the sort. Because I didn't use the exact words that you would expect, it doesn't count? "Exactly," I said, sidestepping him. He moved to block my path. "Well, I do apologize, and I am sorry. I'd like to make it up to you. Why don't you let me take you out to lunch?" "No, thank you. I was on my way out of town." "Were you heading topside? I can take you to lunch up there." "Look, I'd rather you didn't. If you'll just let me be on my way." I heard a muffled bark behind me. I had forgotten to turn Blas back into a lovable stuffed animal. I turned around and whispered over my shoulder. "Back to the norm. Return to your true form." The barking stopped. I turned back and saw Dick staring at me in surprise. I wasn't sure what to say. Was that a dog? Of course not. Why would I have a dog down here? It sounded like a bark to me, and it definitely was not a hellhound. Too yippee. Only Lucifer has hellhounds anyway. I opened the door wide so that he could see the entirety of the foyer. There was no animal there. Blosh was most likely behind the sofa. That was where he kept a stash of toys. Dick leaned his head in the room without stepping inside. He looked around. Odd. I guess you were right. Anyway, shouldn't we be going? We aren't going anywhere. We're both going that way, so we might as well go together. It was hard to argue with that logic. We walked out together. I just hoped that we didn't cross paths with my father again. Having company on the walk out of Inferno was nice. I couldn't say goodbye to my statues, but I did have someone to talk to. He even held the crypt door open when we got back topside. I didn't want to go too far, but he convinced me to take a quick drive out to Philadelphia. Everyone knew Philly had the best cheesesteaks. Food was my kryptonite. I couldn't say no. I was surprised to find that we had a pleasant conversation. Dick wasn't so bad when you got to know him. I still didn't want to get too close to him. I had a job to do. I wasn't there to find a love connection. Plus, what kind of future could I have with the demon? Especially once he figured out that I was a human, well, half anyway. If he knew I was a witch, that would be just as bad. Demons look down on witches. They felt like they were just humans that wanted to have demon power, but were too weak to handle it. Prejudice really does come in all forms. You know, he said as he leaned over conspiratorially, I normally don't date demon women. But I'm having a great time with you. I stiffened, clenching my fists. With that attitude, I'm surprised you date anyone at all. I'm so pleased that you feel like you've made some sort of exception for me, but this is not a date. See? That's exactly what I mean. You're not like the others. There's something different about you. You're absolutely right. I don't like arrogance. You also seem to be offended by compliments, he said. Saying I don't usually date my kind isn't usually a compliment. Don't get all high and mighty, princess. I was trying to say something nice. You failed. I'm sure that hurts your ego, I said haughtily. He stared at me for a good 10 seconds without saying anything. I hoped I hadn't taken it too far. I still wanted him to pay for lunch. Then he burst out laughing. He laughed so long and hard that people at other tables were starting to stare. I wasn't in on the joke. That's exactly what I mean. You're so refreshing. Thanks, I think. I was actually starting to have a good time until you ruined it. He laughed again. I tried to give him the slip after we paid for our meal, but he wouldn't be diverted. Dick insisted on coming shopping with me. I was sure he'd be bored right away. He turned out to have a good eye for fashion. He wanted to pay for them. I could afford to pay for my own shoes. No man or demon had ever offered to buy me shoes before. We finished our shopping and headed back down to Inferno. Dick walked me to my door like a true gentleman. I wasn't sure if that was an oxymoron, but it sure sounded like it. Then he told me to have a great night and went about his business. My night was already great. I couldn't be falling for a demon. Things escalated quickly from there. Dick started saving me a seat at our weekly meetings. If we saw each other at Manic Mondays in the morning, I'd let him buy me coffee. I didn't hate spending time with the guy. He was a distraction. I hadn't found anything else out about the group. My dad was breathing down my neck for results. I was getting tired of the influencing work too. I decided to move back to teens. Let's be honest, making a teenager angry was a lot more satisfying than making a baby cry. The management didn't care what I did if I was pushing souls their way. One night, Dick showed up with Chinese food. We ate on the couch while we watched old kung fu movies. It was my dream date. All we needed was a dog sleeping on our feet. Since we're getting to know each other, what exactly do you do in Inferno? You know what I do. I thought that you'd never ask. I'm part of the management. I oversee the torture division, he said, his chest swelling with pride. I almost dropped my fork. The management was known to keep an eye on any demon, at any time of day or night. Getting on their bad side would be a mistake. They could give you shady assignments. Or worse, send you back to one of the other rounds of hell. Inferno was a good gig if you could get it. Chapter 8. After that startling revelation, I started to put a little more distance between Dick and me. He was not pleased. I didn't really have much choice. If he found out what I really was, I could be the next one visiting the torture department. Of course, I would pick the one guy who knew all the fun and exciting ways to make my life a living hell. I missed him though. He showed up on my doorstep once again. I couldn't help but notice that you've been a bit standoffish since I was told you what I do. I'm sure you've heard the rumors about managers not having time for their girlfriends, but it's not true. Plus, it's not like we have to worry about any human ailments like children. Just let me prove to you that this can work, Dick said. Well, it's not just the hours. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I think we can really be something here. Don't you believe that we at least deserve a chance to try? Aside from the demon manager part, he wasn't a bad guy. Besides, when was the last time I even had a boyfriend? 10 years? It was long enough that I couldn't even remember. Sophia was always saying I should give people a chance. She probably wouldn't say that if she knew who I was giving the opportunity to. What she didn't know couldn't hurt her. I put my arms around his neck. I guess I can give you one chance. I'm not very forgiving. One chance is all I need. Dick was true to his word. Once I gave him the opportunity to prove to me what a great boyfriend Anne could be, he made every effort to impress. In fact, the very next day he had breakfast waiting when I woke up. The house was adorned with black roses. He placed blood-red roses in the center of the bouquets for centerpieces. Well, I see someone has stepped up his game, I said, pulling him close. I like to take advantage of the chances that are given, he said, nuzzling my neck. Since you went to all this trouble, and neither one of us needs to work today, maybe we should stay in bed. Stay in bed for the rest of the day? I like the sound of that. We stayed in bed for hours, and then we moved it to the floor for a few more. By the time we were done, it was night. I was exhausted. I had to crawl to the bottle of water I had by the bed. Dick watched me and laughed. Well, this is certainly good for my ego, he said. Shut up. I haven't eaten all day, I have zero strength. If only some kind-hearted man would feed me, I said. Too bad there's nobody here but us demons. I guess you'll just leave me here to die and dump my body in the fire fields. That's fine. You use me up and throw me away, I said, flailing on the ground. Dick laughed again, crawling over to me. Oh no. She's fainted. I'll have to revive her, Dick said, tickling me. I screamed and tried to roll away. He was unrelenting. He didn't stop until I was out of breath. And that's why I'm the manager of the torture department, he said. I guess I'll have to feed you. Takeout it is. I can order takeout like no one's business. We shared a mutual love of the fire fields. My gatekeeper statues never moved for him. When I tried to tell him about them, he just looked at me strangely and shook his head. We would sit on the city wall, between the gargoyles, having impromptu picnics. We enjoyed watching the fields burn. The crackle of the flames over the miles of burning fields was quite soothing. Occasionally, I'd catch one of the gargoyles looking at me out of the corner of their eye, but they were trained not to move when anyone was around. Most of the demons didn't even know they were alive. Like the gatekeepers, the gargoyles were protectors of the city. They didn't exactly work for my father. They worked to keep hell in balance. Since Inferno was the center of hell, they guarded that too. We were drinking wine and watching trees burn in the fields when Dick turned to me. He had an odd look on his face. I assumed it was the wine. Do you ever think about where we will end up? I assume we'll end up back at my place or yours. No. Seriously? I mean, where we'll end up. Like, will we move in together? Would we take the next step? I think it's a little soon for all that. Eventually, isn't that the goal of most relationships? To progress? I kind of like the idea of waking up next to you every day, he said with a small smile. Don't get ahead of yourself, sir. I haven't even said you could wake up next to me tomorrow, I said, trying to break up the seriousness with a little humor. He didn't take the bait. He just let out a soft sigh and looked out at the fire. He sipped his wine, but he didn't meet my eyes again. I might have said too much. I couldn't afford to get too serious with him. He was growing on me, but I didn't belong here. He did. I was an imposter. I could never tell him the truth. Why plan for the future when the present is a lie? Chapter 9. One night after Dick had fallen asleep, I remembered that it was my turn to do the dishes. If I left them until morning, he would wake up and wash them himself. I made my way down to the kitchen and looked around. I didn't even know where to begin. Dishes were stacked up everywhere. Usually in times like these, I turn to magic. Tonight was no exception. I whispered to my wand, and it unfurled from my wrist. I tapped it on the counter like a conductor. All right, mess. Ugly, putrid, fetid green, it's time to make this kitchen clean, I said, waving my hand around the room like Cinderella's fairy godmother. I seemed to have my father's flair for the dramatic. The words didn't really matter as much as the intention. Section after section of the kitchen became sparkling and clean. I still had to put the dishes away, but it was worth it. I was opening cabinets and humming to myself while the kitchen was cleaning itself when I heard a crash. I ducked out from behind the cabinet and saw Dick standing there. The remnants of a water glass lay shattered at his feet. He would pick now to get out of bed for a late-night drink. What the hell is going on in here? He asked, bewildered. I wish I could say that it's not what it looks like. You're a demon. You can't use human spells. You can't do this. This can't happen. He was stammering now. He'd never stammered before. This can't be a good sign. I whispered to my wand. It crawled back around my wrist, and Dick's eyes got even wider. You were meant to see this. Well, I have seen it. You have some explaining to do. I don't have to explain anything to you. Get out of my house. Anytime something happens between us, you can't just kick me out of your house. Apparently, you've been keeping things for me. I have, and for a good reason. You made it very clear how you feel about humans. You're not human. I'm not just a human. You could be killed for this. Are you threatening me? I asked, baring my teeth. I'm not threatening you, but we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Get out of my house and don't come back. I took off my wand. I said a spell that threw Dick out of the house in his underwear. I locked the door behind him. I didn't see him for almost a week. It was the longest that we had gone without speaking to each other since we began dating. I was terrified at every turn. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. He was part of the management. It was his job to report anything out of the ordinary. Every day when I went to work, I was sure they were to take me aside and drag me up to the torture floor where he worked. But they never did. I didn't tell my father that my cover was blown because it had nothing to do with his problem. I didn't want him to worry. When he worried, people died. It was just his way of solving problems. I stopped going to Manic Mondays altogether. Even though I made terrible coffee, it was easier to choke that down than to have to look Dick in the face. I saw him sometimes on my walk to work. I just dodged him and went the other way. One day, I came home from a particularly dull day at work looking for some excitement. I found it. Dick was sitting on my couch petting Blas. I'd forgotten to turn him back into a stuffed animal before I left. Now I had to worry about my neighbors reporting me, and Dick reporting me. That terrible little traitor Pooch snuggled right up to him wagging his tail. What the hell are you doing here? I asked. Interesting choice of words. I could ask you the same thing, Dick said. I just got home from work, as you can see. You know very well what I mean. Everything I told you is true. I'm here to work. I just left out some of my lineage. Left out? That's an interesting way to put it. You left out the fact that you are a human. Hybrid, thank you. I'm partially demonized. I have horns just like the rest of you. So a half-demon. You say that like it's a bad thing. You are an abomination, by typical standards. So you've come here to share your bigoted beliefs with me? Thank you so much for stopping by. I assume you can see your way out. I was really getting sick of this game. A little piece of me had hoped Dick came to make up with me. Obviously, that wasn't the case. I'm not done. By typical standards, but not mine. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would never consider this an option. But I've met you. I've shared your bed. I've loved you. I do love you. I don't care. You're human, fine. You're a witch, fine. I can keep your secret. I can stay with you. I just need us to be honest from now on. I was stunned. Of all the things Dick could have said, this was the last one I anticipated. He was here. He was willing to stay. I finally had someone that I could be myself with. I thought about telling him everything right then about my father. But I didn't want anyone else to know until we had it all figured out. Say I accept your apology? What do you expect from me? I asked. I expect you not to kick me out of your apartment in my underwear again. Only if you ask me to, I said with a laugh. I stood in the back of the cafe. Dick said he had a surprise for me today. I can't imagine what he needed to announce in a meeting. He took the center of the tiny stage and tapped the microphone. Hello, everyone. As many of the older members of our group know, this group is a place where demons who believe in change for Inferno can connect. Together we can effect change in all of hell. Lucifer has been stuck on very antiquated ideas. Old-fashioned ways. Together, we can usher in a new dimension of torture. The old ways are done. People now have access to haunted houses, scary movies, and instant entertainment. Our regular flailing and whipping aren't going to do the trick. We can really capitalize on this new technology, and with the use of our demon powers, bring the humans that come to us to their knees. These issues have been brought before our supreme leader, and he turns them down at every approach. Now it's time for the change. I know that people all assumed our leader was absent or overseeing from a great distance. But I'm here to tell you that leader is me. Together we can change things for the worse. I was stunned. I had been sharing my time and my bed with this traitor. He was the leader. He was the one. How could I be so stupid? I knew that I needed to warn my father. They hadn't given any specific plan yet. I had to stick around and see it through. My stomach was churning. I wanted to run out there and scream. I couldn't let on that I wasn't down for the cause. I was hurt. He gave the whole speech looking straight in my eyes. I slapped a dumb grin on my face as I weakly applauded. The room exploded into cheers. I could feel my heart breaking. Over the next few meetings, we will come up with a plan for attack. We will take what is ours. Hell will reign again, he yelled with his raised fist in the air. Dick left the small stage. He was quickly surrounded by demons fawning over him. My disgust turned my stomach. They were looking at him like he was a new king of hell. Over my dead body. It was a thin line between love and hate, and I love my father more. He came over to me, arms open for a hug. I stiffly hugged him back. He pulled back and looked at me with confusion. Aren't you happy? I'm more ambitious than I let on. Ambitious is a word. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. I wanted to surprise you. Together we can run things here. This can all be ours. He waved his arm around the whole room, as if I wanted to run any of this. He accepted everything about me that he knew, which was a big step. He didn't even care that I was a witch. Was I wrong to not accept him for this? I didn't think so. I don't want to reign. I just want to live a normal life on Earth. Things were going okay down here, but this is not my life. It was my father's. I wouldn't let anyone take that away from him. Chapter 10. Tonight is the night. As soon as I heard the words out of Dick's mouth, I ran. It had only been a week since his big reveal. Here he was making another big announcement in Manic Mondays. I thought I had more time. I had to warn my father. I ran through the streets of Inferno. He lived on the opposite edge of town. I quickly entered through his gate and ran up the front steps. I could hear people behind me. They were far off, but they were coming all the same. I pounded on the door. My father opened it himself. No servant was present today. "What's going on?" he asked, concerned. "They're coming for you, Dad. They are coming right now. They want to overthrow you by any means necessary. We have to run." "The devil doesn't run. I defend." "Dad, there's dozens of them? The guy that I told you about is leading them. Do you think I got here by being afraid? They are demons. I am the devil. I'm far above any of the demons that could come to me. You can stay and help. Or you can run and hide. It's your decision," he said. He stepped onto the front porch. Looking no older than 50. His waist was bare. He wore only red silk pajama pants. But he looked every part the warrior that I knew him to be. I took my place by my father's side. We may have disagreed, but at the end of the day, he was my father. I would be with him until the end. They rushed the gates and climbed the fence. I saw Dick standing in the middle of the crowd. He looked at me. I looked back at him defiantly. "Your time has come, old man. We don't have to do it this way. This is the way that I would prefer, but you can have an out if you need one." My father turned to look at me. He raised one eyebrow. "This is the arrogant prick you choose?" he asked. He turned to Dick. "The best demon can have hell, but you'll never beat me. Especially not with my daughter by my side. Jane isn't even fully a demon. No one is afraid of her," Dick said with a laugh. He spat on the ground in front of us. My heart burned with the fire of all the realms of hell. To think I had slept with this man. The demons began running towards us, and I had my wand at the ready. I began striking out at them. Father had his demonic power firing. Flames were shooting from his hands, striking down demons at every turn. It was getting hectic. I couldn't keep track of who was wearing what. I wasn't sure who was friend or foe. They were all against us now. I knew that I had to do something, and something big to stop it. I threw my wand to the ground. I reached my hands up and searched inside myself for the core of my demonic power. I unleashed it. Hellhounds rose out of the ground, dozens of them. They stood at my back snarling, howling and stomping their feet. I unleashed them. They ran through the crowd ripping and tearing. Demons were thrown around and pulled apart. My father and Dick had stopped to watch the mayhem. Demons were being eradicated faster and faster. It was a mess of blood and gore. Then, I saw my father going for Dick. He had concentrated his power into a flaming sword, like the guardians held at the gate. Dick was pinned down. There was no way he could get away. He wasn't strong enough to stop my father. I retracted back my power, and all the hellhounds disappeared, except for my father's two that stood growling by his side. I ran. I disappeared, and I reappeared in front of Dick. I'd never done anything like that before. I held him behind me and faced my father. He stopped the sword just before it touched my chest. I could feel the heat of its flames. My father caught me in his steely gaze. "This man came to kill me," he spat out, "and you still defend him?" "I don't defend, but I do protect. I loved him once. He's smart, savvy, and capable. He could have been an asset to you. You've chosen to be his enemy, by dismissing his ideas. "I will not let you kill him," I said. My father looked at me disgusted. I knew that he couldn't kill me. Aside from having to explain it to my mother, he'd never be able to live with himself. "Have it your way. I never want to see you again." He threw the sword like a javelin, straight up. It pierced the sky of Inferno, splitting it in two. I could see the sunlight from above. Any remaining demons hissed and hid their faces. We were thrust up through the crack and landed in the graveyard near the crypt entrance. The crack sealed shut behind us. "Well, what are we supposed to do now?" Dick said, his voice ragged. He was still worn down from the fight. "I guess you can stay with me. I am from here, you know," I said, standing up and brushing myself off. I looked back at the place where the crack had been. Dad and I have been through our tough times, but he had never put me out. I wondered if there would be a way back in. "A place here? Like a house?" he asked. "More of a condo. There's a guest room. You're more than welcome to stay and figure out how exactly we can handle this." I headed to the spot where I had parked my car. I went from not wanting to date a demon to living with one. Things never seemed to go my way.